You know, when we think about the Belgian Congo, it's almost impossible not to think about the horrors inflicted under King Leopold II.
Absolutely. A really dark chapter in history.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But there's another tragedy within this dark chapter, and it's one that we don't hear about nearly enough.
Yeah.
The systematic removal of biracial children,
Yes.
known as Metis children,
Metis Children.
from their Congolese mothers during Belgian rule. We're going to get into all of that today, and these children's stories, I have to say, they expose a painful legacy of colonial racism that frankly continues to impact lives even now.
I completely agree. And it's something that, as you said, we really don't share enough about, and it's a story that needs to be told.
It really does.
Yeah.
And we're going to be going through an article today from Al Jazeera
Okay.
that reveals some really heartbreaking personal stories from this time.
Yeah.
But before we get into the personal stories, I kind of want to just lay the groundwork a little bit. So we're talking about the Belgian Congo under Leopold II and then later under direct Belgian rule.
That's right.
And during this time, the removal of these children, these Metis children, it wasn't just something that was happening on the side.
It was policy.
It was policy.
This wasn't a few isolated incidents. This was systemic, and we're talking decades. We're talking from the 1920s right up to Congolese independence in 1960.
Wow.
And it's important to remember that wasn't just happening in the Congo. We can't forget Rwanda-Urundi, which is present-day Rwanda and Burundi,
right,
which was also under Belgian control at the time.
Yeah.
And the same heartbreaking practice of taking biracial children from their mothers was happening there too, so it was widespread.
Yeah, so this was a large-scale, systematic thing that was happening.
Absolutely.
And to put a face to this, one of the stories that really, I think for both of us, really stayed with us from the article was Monique Bitubinji's experience. And I'm going to try to do this justice, but essentially she was 4 years old. She was playing in her village.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, colonial officials showed up.
Wow.
And they took her.
Just took her.
Took her away from her mother, from everything she knows.
Oh, God.
This was 1953 when this happened.
Yeah.
And her mother, so she wouldn't have to say goodbye, she left before they could take her daughter.
Oh.
And so Monique is, I mean, she's just this little kid.
Just a baby.
A baby. And she's being taken. She remembers fragments of it, you know, like walking, crossing the river. She even remembers at one point being on a truck. And next to her on this truck is the body of a woman who had died in childbirth.
Oh, my goodness.
And she ends up at a Catholic mission in Katendi.
Wow.
Essentially raised by nuns.
Right.
That became her new reality. Just
Yeah.
completely ripped from her life.
It's hard to fathom really what that would be like at 4 years old, to have your entire world just ripped away from you like that. And we have to remember this wasn't a unique situation. Monique's story, while heartbreaking, sadly was not unique.
Right. And we see that with, I think it was Jacques Gogeber's story.
Yes.
Really reveals another layer of this whole tragedy.
Yes, it does. So Jacques, she was also a Metis woman.
Right.
And like Monique, she was taken from her family as a child.
Wow.
And sent to Belgium.
Gosh.
And get this, it was only much later in life that she actually found out the truth.
Really?
Yeah, she'd grown up believing that her mother had abandoned her.
Oh, no.
But the truth was her mother had fought like crazy to keep her children.
Wow.
And she wasn't alone.
No.
That whole experience of growing up thinking your mother willingly gave you up.
Yeah.
That was a burden carried by so many Metis individuals.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
They've had no idea about the coercion, the threats, the violence that their mothers had faced.
You know, it's staggering to even think about the weight of that misconception and the injustice of it all.
Absolutely.
And it really makes the work of groups like the AMB, the Association Metis de Belgique, so important, right? I mean, they're on the front lines advocating for recognition, raising awareness,
potential work,
and providing such vital support for Metis individuals who are still trying to piece together their past.
Because it's not just about taking children away. It's about taking their identities.
Right.
Names were changed, birth dates altered.
Wow.
All of that made it so difficult, sometimes impossible for them to trace their family later.
It's almost as if they were trying to erase them, erase their existence.
Exactly.
And we see that, I mean, the Al Jazeera article, it highlights Everest Nikolakis' story.
Right.
And his story really illuminates this struggle.
In what way?
So he has spent years fighting for a birth certificate.
Wow.
Just to have some official record of who he is, where he came from.
Basic, right?
A basic right.
A basic human right.
And the Belgian government is giving him roadblocks left and right.
Really?
denying him that fundamental piece of himself.
It's almost unbelievable that that's still happening.
It is unbelievable, but this is the reality.
Yeah.
And it speaks to how this struggle for recognition continues.
Yeah.
The fight for these records, for acknowledgement, for closure.
It's as important now as it's ever been.
Absolutely. And one of the most significant things to happen in terms of this fight is this lawsuit.
Right.
Filed by Monique and 4 other women who were taken from their mothers.
Yes.
And they're accusing the Belgian state of crimes against humanity.
Wow.
They're arguing that this wasn't just some consequence of colonial rule.
Right.
It was a deliberate racist policy.
This lawsuit is huge.
It's groundbreaking.
Because it's shining a light on a truth that's been hidden for far too long.
Exact.
And it's demanding accountability.
Yes.
For the systemic abduction, the segregation, the abuse of these children.
It's a monumental legal battle. And I mean, who knows what the outcome will be?
It could have far-reaching consequences, that's for sure.
It really could.
Yeah.
And it feels like a turning point. But at the same time, the fight's not over.
No, it's not.
You know, it's like reading this article, what really struck me was this effort to uncover the scope of this whole tragedy.
Yeah.
The article talks about this historian, Delphine Lowers.
Okay.
She's trying to reconstruct these children's stories.
It's amazing.
Trying to piece together the truth.
I mean, what a task.
It is a huge task because so many of the records from that time are still classified.
Oh, wow.
They're locked away.
Wow.
And accessing those documents, it's crucial, not just for historical accuracy,
Of course.
but for the Metis community.
They deserve answers.
They deserve answers.
Absolutely.
It really makes you think,
Yeah.
you know? Like, what are they so afraid of?
Exactly. It's like, what are you hiding?
Yeah.
Why make it so hard to uncover this?
It's like they're trying to, I don't know, just silence the past. Protect themselves.
Yeah, right. Like we were saying, this isn't just about the past. This has a ripple effect. It's about the present and it's about the future. The legacy of colonialism, it's a long shadow.
It really is.
And we have to be willing to look at these uncomfortable truths if we're ever going to move forward in any meaningful way.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point because, again, this isn't just history. You know, it's not just dates and names on a page.
Mm-hmm.
These are real lives.
Lives that were shattered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're still dealing with the consequences. So it's like, how do we even begin to reconcile with something like this? A past that's so present.
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? It's the question.
Yeah.
And it takes a collective effort to even begin to untangle it. We have to acknowledge the horrors, of course, but we also have to be willing to act.
Yeah.
We need to address the lasting impact this has had and continues to have.
You're right. And, you know, I think for me, when I think about what that looks like, it's like, okay, words are important, acknowledging it, but then what? What are the concrete steps that could be taken to really address this? And what does that look like?
Well, I think for starters, the Belgian government, they need to put their money where their mouth is. They've issued apologies, sure.
Right.
But words ring hollow without action. Give full access to those classified records. Transparency is key here. And reparations, that has to be on the table.
Right, because it's not about putting a price tag on suffering.
Exactly.
It's about acknowledging the injustice. It's about taking some kind of tangible step towards making things right.
It's about restoring some dignity.
Yes.
And giving people the resources they need to even begin to heal. And let's not forget the importance of groups like AMB. They're so important, providing resources, offering advocacy for the Metis community, just being a platform for their voices to be heard, you know?
It's amazing work. And on that note, for our listeners, if you're interested in diving deeper into this, we've included a link to the full Al Jazeera article in our episode description. I highly recommend checking it out. And we've also included some information on how to access personal histories that are related to this period. Because you might be surprised how many families are still out there searching for answers, searching for those lost connections.
We all have that need, that longing for connection, for belonging. To know where we come from, to have that ripped away is devastating.
It really is. This whole story, this entire deep dive, it's been incredibly heavy, to be honest. And I think it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the weight of this history. But what I find so inspiring, what I keep coming back to, is the resilience of the Metis community. I mean, their fight for justice, for recognition, for the right to even know their own stories. It's incredible.
It speaks volumes.
It really does. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit, even in the face of just unspeakable injustice. It's a reminder, I think, that we can all carry with us. Sometimes the stories we haven't heard are the ones that we need to hear the most.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, this This has been quite a deep dive. Thank you for listening, everybody.